What is going on, everyone? Welcome into the Brand Partial Show. So let's get into it. So I wanted to talk, I've been listening to the 49ers press conference, and I'm a big believer in the 49ers. 49ers are one of my favorite teams to watch. I think Kyle Shanahan is a baller as a head coach, I think. So I was listening to, Brock Purdy's not going to practice for a little bit. I'm not sure when he's going to get back. But I think the vibe around this team is they have four quarterbacks. They added Brandon Allen, Sam Darnold, Trey Lance, Brock Purdy. The vibe I kind of get from this team is, first of all, Trey Lance seems really confident, which I think is cool because this is a guy who he was the starter. He was the guy this time last year. To see him confident, I think that is a true belief in this organization. I think that says a lot about this coaching staff, John Lynch, the 49ers as a whole. If even the guy that's projected to be the second string, who was a former number 3 overall recruit or number 3 overall draft pick that he traded up for, is positive. So if things are all positive for the 49ers, I think that is really good. That says a lot about this team. Sounds like they're excited about Javon Hargrave, what he can do. Listening to Fred Warner, multiple of the 49ers players. And, there's a battle at defensive end. Drake Jackson, Cleveland Farrell. Cleveland Farrell, it's too bad he's just been somewhat of a disappointment in the NFL. It's a guy that was a number fourth overall pick in the 2019 draft. Just has not lived up to expectations. And then Drake Jackson, a guy that they got, I believe, second round edge rusher out of USC, really flashed some ability. So battle at the opposite defensive end spot. Nick Bosa, not practicing as of yet, but they're going to get him back. There's a lot of things moving in the right direction continually for the 49ers. Danny Gray at wide receiver, does he take another step this year? This is a guy that did some nice things, flashed some ability. Sounds like Brandon Ayuk. The vibe what I get when they've asked Shanahan, it sounds like Brandon Ayuk is continuing to mature and get better. Shanahan thought Ayuk had his best season last year. So, for the 49ers, it seemed it just seems all positive, and it seems like they're always doing stuff to move the ball forward. It kind of you get the same, the 49ers and Eagles, you always get the same vibe. It's positive, put your head down, grind, always doing things to move forward and to continue to get better. But yeah, you gotta love the quarterback competition that the 49ers have in Darnold, Sam Darnold, a former first-round pick, Trey Lance, former third overall pick, and then Brock Purdy, a former seventh-round pick, Mr. Irrelevant. So yeah, I like what the 49ers have done. I think that this is a team where, they have missed on some draft picks a little. Maybe they haven't drafted necessarily as well as they should have, but they have done a good job of finding high-end talent, whether that's Fred Warner, Nick Bosa. And you look at a guy like Javon Kinlaw, they talked about he's essentially been a bust up until this point, former first-round defensive tackle in the 2020 draft. They took him along with Ayuk, but they're talking about that Kinlaw's is in as good a shape as he's been, and this is a guy who you feel like if he's in shape, then that is probably the best chance. Well, along with a lot of players, but if Kinlaw's in good shape, that's his best chance to have a lot of success. So, I just want to touch on that with the 49ers. So, New England Patriots. So, you listen to New England, you listen to Bill Belichick. It's kind of the same old with Bill Belichick. Doesn't want to say a whole lot. Doesn't really look super thrilled to be in the press conference, but he sounds like he's excited about the rookies. Sounds like a lot of people are looking forward to what Christian Gonzalez can do. I'm a fan of Gonzalez's game. If you remember, he was a corner, started his career at Colorado, transferred to Oregon, had a really nice career this past year with the Ducks, and then worked his way to a first-round pick by New England. So, I think there's some rookies that have a chance to do some nice things. Keon White's another guy they drafted, So, but Belichick, always good to get back. I think he's a guy that, even though he doesn't always show it, I think he is excited when football season starts. He seems like a guy that just lives and breathes football. Jack Jones was arrested, they talked about, but he is with the team. He is practicing. Asked about not signing Hopkins, and, Belichick, he doesn't want to say a whole lot about this. Obviously, they didn't sign Hopkins, but Hopkins chose to sign with the Titans. And, he talked about that they bring in a number of guys. They talk to a lot of guys, and he just happened to be a guy that they didn't sign. But yeah, Belichick expects big things from Devontae Parker, Juwan Bentley. He talked about he's happy with their performance. He's going to work out. They're going to try to work out a contract. Reporters, it's funny. Reporters were asking him questions about Trent Brown. This one reporter asked him 3 times about Trent Brown's performance last year, and Belichick kind of avoided it. And then the third time he asked, he said, Trent Brown. He goes, I'm not going to get into, I think his name was Tom. He goes, I'm not going to get into what guys did last season, Tom. So, yeah, Belichick, the day one press conference was classic Belichick. He looked like he did not want to talk to the press at all. But I think Belichick, if you were to hook him up to the Robert De Niro lie detector test, I think he knows this is a pivotal year in his career. I think he knows that there is a likelihood that he could be let go at the end of the season if they don't perform at a high level and really make a legitimate, probably make the playoffs and actually make win a game or two in the playoffs. That's one thing people forget. It's been a while since New England's won a playoff game. You got to go back to 2018 since they have won a playoff game. So it's been a few years now. So New England, I think, if my honest opinion, I don't think New England is a playoff team this year. They do have it is just a solid roster. I've talked about this before. I mean, you look at Bentley's a solid linebacker. Bring back Jabril Peppers. The wide receiving core is okay. I think the offensive line is solid. You look, the defensive line is going to be pretty good. I think Gonzalez will boost the secondary. The secondary always seems to perform fairly well. I think Gonzalez is what they need to add some athleticism to that secondary. No more Devin McCourty, but you still have Kyle Duggar. I think Gonzalez kind of complements. I think he complements the secondary, and Duggar's kind of your hard-hitting, close to the box, does have some coverage ability, but Gonzalez is going to really provide that coverage ability. And when Belichick and New England go man-to-man, I think Gonzalez is a guy that they should have a lot of trust in to cover man-to-man. So a lot of solid pieces to the New England offense. I'm going to say they missed the playoffs here, but Mac Jones, I hear from a lot of people how confident Mac Jones is. I think that's real. Obviously, you want a confident quarterback, but I think for a New England team that is really kind of lacking stars, you need a quarterback that is kind of that. He's got that really that killer, that dog mentality, and I think Mac Jones, hopefully, New England next year, because I think this year you're not really going to see that full potential. I think next year, if you add Mac Jones, more and more weapons, I think that'll be key for New England to get the most out of Mac Jones and to see them really make a run. I think they're still lacking some high-end skill position for Mac Jones to really put everything in place. But Mac Jones, I think, did take a step forward in improvement from year 1 to year 2. I think he looked a little bit more accurate. He looked a little more sharp. He looked like he looked like he had more confidence going through his progression. So Mac Jones, confident player. It's funny. A lot of people talk about how he likes to talk trash. And, we'll kind of see what happens with New England. This will be a fascinating story to watch. What happens with how does New England finish, and what happens with Bill Belichick if they underachieve this season. So this is Pete Carroll's press conference, and I didn't get through all of it, but I really wanted to hear. He talked about Devin Witherspoon a little bit, and Devin Witherspoon is just really polarizing for me. I'm just super interested to see how Witherspoon is performing in Seattle's camp. Witherspoon, if you remember, was their 6th overall pick, first round this past season. And Witherspoon, a guy with a lot of ability, a high-end corner who can cover, he can tackle, he makes hard hits. He's a tone setter for a defense. And I kind of compared it to when Seattle drafted Earl Thomas. It was really, you're really getting that guy that's just going to bring an edge to your defense, is just going to get after it and compete. Like Earl Thomas, I think Earl Thomas is one of the better safeties all time, but I think he was always a guy, if you remember at Texas, he had a knack for just raising the play around him. If you remember the year after he left Texas, I know they lost Colt McCoy, but Texas really slipped. And then you look at Seattle. When Earl Thomas got to Seattle, it seemed like Seattle was already getting better before Earl Thomas, because I think Carroll was there for a year, and then when Earl Thomas came, you really saw the Seattle defense really play with an edge. I think maybe that's what, because I think Pete Carroll was kind of like in a weird transition. I think that I think the end of the Russell Wilson era, I think he was kind of in a, I think he was just kind of in a lull. Like, I don't think that those Seattle teams were indicative of the Pete Carroll identity. I think with Russell Wilson gone, I think last year you saw more of the Pete Carroll identity, running the football, high-end play on the offensive line, complementary defense, athletes that can cover. You hit on some draft picks and guys like Tariq Woolen, and then the bookend tackles. So I think that Witherspoon, I think why Witherspoon is so fascinating, because I think that is the pick that could really turn the corner and get them over the top and get this Seattle team not just to be a playoff team, but be a legitimate NFC championship contender and possibly get to a Super Bowl. So I think Devin Witherspoon, if you're going to look at one guy that's going to, there's one guy that they've added to this team, maybe not even necessarily Jackson Smith-Njigba, one guy that's going to turn the page and get Seattle looking back to the 2013, 2014 Seattle Seahawks, I think it's Devin Witherspoon. Not that Charbonnet, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Derek Hall, other guys that they drafted aren't going to contribute. I don't think those guys are going to necessarily set as much of the tone that Devin Witherspoon can set. But yeah, he was asked about Jackson Smith-Njigba, and Smith-Njigba said it's just as smooth as they come athletically. I think Jackson Smith-Njigba I think this guy was put on earth to play wide receiver. And what I mean by that is, I think he's the guy that if you just went and watched him in a 7-on-7, I don't think, and you didn't see him, if you just see him against air, I think you'd be like, yeah, that guy looks pretty good, looks pretty smooth. But he's a guy that once the lights come on and it's game time, I think that's when Jackson Smith-Njigba really separates himself. This is a guy who knows how to get open, knows how to set up DBs. He just can really work the slot, run routes with precision. Interesting skill set that Jackson Smith-Njigba has, and I think you're going to see some high-end level ability flash right away. But yeah, they've got some other young guys they like. Dwayne Eskridge at wide receiver. Tariq Woolen, hopefully takes another step in the right direction. Quandre Diggs. So yeah, Seattle quietly. Last year, everyone thought Seattle was going to fall off because everyone thought, you think young team, veteran quarterback who's really underachieved for the most part, with the exception of last year. Everyone just thought those two things right there just had the recipe for them to fall off. But no, Seattle, a lot of things came together. Young players developed, and then this year had a really good draft. Arguably the best draft. And now you're looking at a 2023 season where there's hype, excitement, and they can even move the ball, continue to move the ball forward this year. So let's listen to Dan Campbell's press conference. Looks like Vitai's health is interesting. Vaitai, their guard. Vitai's the guy they're going to want to get back. He was projected to be a starter this past season, missed the whole year, so he's going to be in a position battle with Glasgow at the guard position. But yeah, CJ Chauncey Gardner-Johnson was hurt a few days ago. If you remember, they thought it was season-ending injury. That was what initially was reported, I believe. But then it sounds like he's just going to be okay. He's going to miss a few more days just for precautionary measures. Yeah, with Detroit, I think the vibe is you're not hearing a lot. There's not as much excitement last year, which I think maybe is the best case for Detroit, because I think Detroit's at a point where they don't want to be. I think last year was the excitement to kind of get people on, put people on notice, get more attention and and let people know that we're doing something special. I think the vibe this year, is the Lions are okay. We've proved that we can make some noise. Let's take the next step. Let's put our head down. Let's get after it. That's what I think Dan Campbell's mindset is. I think he's a good job of. I talked to Mike Norvell, Florida State. I think Dan Campbell is a guy that does a good job of staying level-headed, even though he does seem he is passionate, he's intense. I do think he does. I don't think he gets too high. I don't think he goes too low. I think even though he does show some emotion, I think that Dan Campbell does a pretty good job of staying level-headed. So I think the Lions are doing a good job of putting their head down and grinding. I think why they're taking that approach more so this year than the flash and the attention and Hard Knocks of last year. I think they understand that we got a good core nucleus of young players, and I think a lot of them need to take the next step this year. Josh Paschal flashed some ability. We'll see if we can take the next step. Aiden Hutchinson had a nice rookie year. That's great, but we drafted you second overall to be that game-changing defensive end, which he flashed in multiple games, but can we see it consistently? He's put in a lot of work in the offseason, they said. We'll see if he takes another step in his game. You look at Jamison Williams, this guy they took 12th overall, expected big things for. He's going to be suspended 6 games, but he's been practicing, so they want him to come back quickly and make an impact. Traded for Denzel Mims recently. Denzel Mims, if you followed his career, there was a lot of hype about him coming out in the draft. A second round pick who had a lot of promise and expectations, just has not lived up to those with the Jets. But he is a guy that can play on the outside, can play on the slot. He is a big body, strong, athletic guy. So I think he's a guy that could fill in nicely for some depth on the Lions offense. So it'd be interesting to see how much Denzel Mims plays early on, if he makes any sort of impact and can kind of get his career back on track and be productive at all. But yeah, I think the Lions receiving core, I think it should be fine without Jamison Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown. It's going to be tough for St. Brown to kind of match the production he had last year in the high-end level play. But I think he is capable of having another season like that, because I think you saw it at the end of the rookie year, but you thought maybe that was just kind of a fluke. But him doing it this year consistently at a high level, it really establishing himself as maybe a top 10 to 15 level receiver. I think you combine that, I think when you combine him proving it 2 years in a row and the work ethic and the dedication and competitiveness this guy has, I think he's setting the tone that he's going to establish himself as one of the better receivers for a long time, and this is not just a year and a half kind of fluky thing. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is establishing himself as one of the better receivers. But yeah, and then the big question I've raised is the Lions defense going to take another step this year and continue to get better. If you remember, the Lions defense was really bad the first couple of weeks of last season. They want to just continue to get better and better and not really look back at all. So yeah, following Jamison Williams, does Denzel Mims make an impact? It sounds like they're kind of putting their head down and grinding. So those are kind of some of what I wanted to summarize with kind of the vibe I've got from listening to Dan Campbell's press conference and what I've heard about the Lions so far. So it's rumored Dalvin Cook to the Jets. And so what excites me about Dalvin Cook potentially going to the Jets is him and Aaron Rodgers in the backfield. I think that is a really dynamic backfield. And I was reading an article, and they talked about Dalvin Cook has played with Kirk Cousins his whole career. It would be fun to see him play with a high-end level quarterback. Dalvin Cook is a guy that's still got some explosiveness. I think even though he's got some miles on the tires, I think Cook still has a chance to really do some nice things in the Jets offense. You got to believe if the Jets sign him, that might be the end. They might cut Michael Carter, but Dalvin Cook, Breece Hall, I think that would be a fantastic 1-2 punch in the backfield. So Dalvin Cook, Breece Hall, Aaron Rodgers in the backfield potentially for the Jets. I think that just I think that make a world of a difference for the Jets, or like a big difference. But I think it'll make a difference in the sense that I think it's going to put a little more pressure on defenses, and that's definitely going to give them a lot more big play, big threat ability. But yeah, Dalvin Cook, yeah, I think it's a move. It's kind of one of those why not move, because like say Dalvin Cook gets hurt, you still have Breece Hall, you still have I'm trying to think of the running backs, but it seems like the Jets, though, you get the feel this is an offense that hopefully the offensive line, Mekhi Becton, Vera Tucker, and some of their talent on the offensive line, you get the feel that like a high-end running back is not going to help this offense a lot, but it's more of kind of an added luxury. So the point I'm trying to hit at is I think a Dalvin Cook signing is more so. It's not like a huge risk, but it's what is it? Low. It's fairly low risk and a high reward, I guess what I'm trying to hint at. So I think Dalvin Cook to the Jets, I would be a fan of. We'll see what happens there. Sounds like there's 5 teams that he's interested in. He's going to visit the Jets this upcoming weekend. So let's talk Doug Peterson and the Jacksonville Jaguars. So what's the vibe I was kind of getting from Doug Peterson listening? Well, I think they're kind of in the mindset with the Lions. I think they made the noise. They've got attention. They got the eyes on them last year. I think they're ready to put their head down and do something special this year. I think Trevor Lawrence, to me, I think the Jacksonville Jaguar, I think that's what was so special about them taking Trevor Lawrence. I think this team was kind of taking on the identity of Trevor Lawrence for the most part. And what I mean by that is I think the team as a whole has really, because when you get a guy like Trevor Lawrence who's dedicated to working and getting better each and every day, I think the team can sense that, and they start to do everything to not only maximize their play, but they start to make the necessary changes to try to level up with the quarterback. So I think that's what Jacksonville has done. And they get Calvin Ridley this year, which is going to be big. Ridley's still a young guy, very talented wide receiver who missed this past year with the gambling suspension. So you feel like with added pieces, and they did a really nice job in the draft. I like Anton Harrison, the tackle they got. We'll see if he starts. So with an offseason where you believe they got better talent-wise, coming off a year where they exceeded expectations, you got to believe that this year, with all that being said, this is kind of a year where you do want to put your head down and grind, because anything less than last year, you got to believe anything less than the AFC divisional would be a disappointment. Even if, like I'd say Jacksonville, say they have a 8-9 win season, just miss the playoffs. To me, that's a huge disappointment. So I think they understand that anything short of what they did last year is going to be really disappointment. They're going to have a real bitter taste in their mouth. So I think it is with all that being said, it is a year where you really want to have a sense of urgency to really try to improve and build upon what you did last year. And you really don't want it. After a year where you take a giant leap forward, you really don't want to take a couple steps back. So Jacksonville going to be super. Jacksonville, one of my favorite teams to watch. I love Trevor Lawrence. I think I'm a fan of why I love Trevor Lawrence is kind of like what I've hit on. I'm a fan of guys who take all the necessary steps to continually get better, and that's what Trevor Lawrence exemplifies. The guy that I'm sure, because they always say that to improve, you want to make. It's all about making qualitative changes over time. Like I've kind of done with this podcast. I've added a new background, added some lights, got a tripod, added a new desk, added new thumbnails. You're slowly to improve at something. If you notice, and look at other YouTubers, they make subtle changes over time. I think that's what Trevor Lawrence does. If you listen, he was talking to Chris Sims. He made changes to his throwing motion from year 1 to year 2. I love that Trevor Lawrence he seems like a guy that's just open to make changes, open to improve. Obviously, the size, the arm strength, it's all there for Trevor Lawrence. It's really no question why he succeeded. So it's cool that he's open to change. I love that Jacksonville has taken the necessary steps to get better. All right. So let's talk about Atlanta. So what's kind of the vibe I'm getting from the Atlanta Falcons? Well, to me, the Atlanta Falcons are a team where I have a hard time predicting I think they're a team that's hard to predict what their record's going to be. But they are a team, if you look on paper, you go, man, they have some talent. And especially offensively, like Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts. Hopefully he continues to get better. They are the on paper hype team, and I don't say that with any disrespect. I say that more so in a positive way. Like Atlanta was kind of a team that was left for dead last year. A lot of people thought they were going to fall off, and they just competed. I think Atlanta's that team this year where maybe they could surprise some people, have a better record than people think. They're a team that, where I could see making the playoffs, I have a hard time believing they make a run. They quietly had a nice offseason. I mean, they brought in Bud Dupree, traded for Jeff Okudah. So they've done things to quietly move the ball forward. I just don't know. I don't know if they've done enough for this to be a team that makes a run in the playoffs and makes some noise in the playoffs. So I think that, yeah, I mean, the backfield going to be strong. Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier, Drake London, Kyle Pitts. The receiving core should be strong. Quarterback, I mean, Desmond Ridder, kind of he is who he is. Hopefully he can improve. But yeah, I think defense. It's all gonna defensively. What's really going to dictate Atlanta's season is does this defense improve as a whole, and can they rush the passer? Can they be more stout against the run? Can the defensive line just be more of a physical presence overall? I think that's the big question for Atlanta, because I like that Arthur Smith has really set the identity about running the ball. But yeah, the defense just needs to get better and improve as a whole and be more stout against the run and rushing the passer. So yeah, I like the Atlanta Falcons. I think it's a good football team overall. Yeah, I think they are. It's a team that I think you kind of get the vibe that they are. They're ready to work. They're feeling confident. AJ Terrell's fully healthy. AJ Terrell, one of the better corners in the NFL. He's coming off an injury. You kind of get the feel that Terrell. Well, he did seem, I don't know, he is a guy that seems kind of level-headed. You get the feel that he is hungry to improve and kind of show people why he is one of the best corners in the NFL. So yeah, I just wanted to touch on that with Atlanta. So let's talk the Giants. So I think the Giants, to me, the Giants are a team you worry is going to take a step back, just because you kind of get the vibe like they're confident right now. You don't. Why you worry is because you worry was that kind of the ceiling of Daniel Jones's play last year with the Giants, and you worry that they kind of rode some momentum. And Saquon was fully healthy for a season. Hopefully he stays healthy once again, knock on wood. But you kind of get the worry that maybe that was Saquon's best, kind of an outlier season for him, a little bit of an outlier season for Daniel Jones. You feel like they kind of rode some early momentum to some wins. So I guess there was a lot of things that kind of went their way. Maybe they had a little bit more luck on their side. You kind of worry that this year, maybe that's how the argument for them taking a step back is they don't catch as many lucky breaks this season. But yeah, the Giants still a good roster. I think they had a nice draft. I think Deonte Banks will be a really good corner for them. I think the offensive line is continually improving, which is something they needed to do. So yeah, the Giants, even under Dayball, even under with their general manager, I think they are a team that's going to be good. We'll just see. We'll see if they can sustain high-end level play from a lot of the guys, and we'll see if the wide receiving core can improve at all. It seems like it's kind of a wide receiving core that it's been okay, but it's not a receiving core that you really can lean on really for most, for a majority of the game. So we'll see. Hopefully the defense, wide receiving core, and the defense as a whole continues to improve a little bit. And hopefully Daniel Jones plays at a high level, and hopefully this team continues to rally and play at a high level for Brian Daboll. So I got to wrap with that. Thanks for tuning in to the Brant Partial Show. Make sure to stay tuned for more episodes and clips from the show.